Sorry, everybody. I was just getting the lay of the land on how long we can be here.
How long can we be here?
As long as you want.
Wow.
But let's not go that long.
Well, spring showcase coming up in...
Kevin, I want you to move over. But you gave it...
I did this way the whole time.
Okay.
All right, good? Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. How's it going?
I was just thinking, man, it has been so long that I am legitimately happy to see some of the people who are in here, like not program affiliate people,
of course
but like media. I mean, like them too, but media people is like, oh, I haven't seen this person in a long time. It's been since Atlanta, or at least the Saturday after Atlanta, since the last time we saw some of these folks. So genuinely nice to be back inside and ready to talk some actual honest to goodness football.
There is a lot to talk about. I'm sure most of the people are watching the Ryan Day, and then the two tables there. Tom, I have no idea where to begin.
Yeah, well, what I thought was, for the people who are watching on the live stream, maybe we should start with some of the stuff that was not live streamed, because you were around. Were you at Matt Patricia?
I was with Matt Patricia and James Laurinaitis.
I saw Sue asking
who was being streamed.
So we did not have anyone on the first table. So like Matt Patricia was not.
Okay. And that was also
Keenan Bailey at the very end.
Keenan Bailey, Matt Guerreri.
Guerreri, yeah. Okay. No, Matt Guerreri was. But anyway, let's start with Matt Patricia. Yeah. I saw Sue asking about Patricia.
Okay.
What did Matt Patricia have to say?
Well, this is a guy who seems very, very happy to be in college, and he studied the game with Bill Belichick last year while they were doing their podcast, and just the playoff aspect excited him. It's becoming more and more familiar to the NFL, and so that kind of excited him. But looking at what they're going to do defensively, it's based on, what do you have? And that kind of went into one of the lines that James Laurinaitis said. He said, it's not what you do, it's what you've got. So I thought that was interesting. And so Matt Patricia, he's multiple, he'll do whatever it is, but the fact that he's coming into a staff where he's the only new guy. So this is the Ohio State defense. And then this spring is about evaluating players, looking at players, and then seeing this is not about scheme this spring. But interestingly, went over and asked James Laurinaitis about C.J. Hicks, because that's one of the questions we have this spring. And he said the first person he thought of when Matt Patricia was hired was C.J. Hicks. And so he expects him to be moving around. He was asked, will he be in your room? He's like, I don't know. We'll find out on Monday, first day of practice.
Moving around.
So that's what some of the defensive coaches are thinking with Matt Patricia. Like James Laurinaitis talked about just how excited he was that he is here. But it's one of the big questions about Patricia is the Detroit thing. And, I can try to find the exact quotes, but he basically said one of the problems he had was when you're with New England and they would win a Super Bowl, lose a Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. And when you lose the Super Bowl, all you can focus on is getting back to the Super Bowl. And you're just 100% tunnel vision. And so they lost the Super Bowl, and then he went to Detroit. And he tried to take that same tunnel vision. He's like, that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And so he acknowledged that. He said that there's been some reflection, and he realizes that he did not do things the right way in Detroit. And so, I think that takes some humility. But also you've been fired. So it's like, you're not, everybody knows, everybody saw. But I thought it was interesting how he explained one of the issues he had. He was just like, I was no longer with New England, but I kind of kept that same thing, and that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and when you think about it, that makes sense. If you're coming in as, let's say, Mike Seleni, who was the GA assistant offensive line coach last year, he's going to UNLV. He's now the offensive line coach at UNLV. You can't go to UNLV and give all the same, say all the same. You could say all the same words you said at Ohio State. And yeah, the jerseys are red and the helmets are gray, but it's not the same thing, right? So that makes a lot of sense that, the culture in New England in the early 2010s and the culture of the Detroit Lions about 1960 through 2023 or so are very, very different things. So that's interesting. That's an interesting thing to say. And, and it's very easy to sort of paint that as, and these losers didn't get it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that was a little bit more of a self-reflective thing rather than because there are ways to turn bad cultures into good cultures. That if you were familiar with the New England Patriots prior to the arrival of Tom Brady, or maybe even a few years earlier than that, they were like one of the most hopeless teams in the league for decades. Outside of, they played the Super Bowl 20, and it was like, can you believe the New England Patriots, who were famous for just like the snowplow game, and that was it before that, are in the Super Bowl? And it was kind of the same thing 10 years later. You can change that culture, but that's not a you come in day one and everything, you just flip on the light switch and it's like, oh, now it's bright in here and now everything's different.
Yeah, and Dan Campbell kind of able to do that because of his time as a player and knowing how like it works as a player and what they want to do. Certainly a player's coach, but he pushed them a lot. Just different kinds of being pushed, and the way Patricia did it certainly didn't work. He also said he just loves the college environment. Like he said he wants his family to experience that. He's got a wife, he's got kids. He just wants them around the whole college environment, around Ohio State. So I thought that was interesting, where you kind of get this like sentimental feel of college when you've been away, and he's been in the NFL for 20 years or whatever. He formerly worked with Tim Walton back at Syracuse back in the day. So me and Timmy, we go way back, like 25 years, that sort of thing. So he does have ties to college, but also it's very becoming more and more reminiscent with it, and he's excited about it. I wonder how excited he'll be when he has to recruit the same guys each year.
Yeah,
but you can't sign somebody to a real 3-year or 4-year deal, which is, that's the big advantage that the NFL has that college does not.
Yeah, and that's going to be part of the adjustment for him. It's a different game. Ryan Day talked about the fact that it's the NFL and college have sort of become more similar in some ways, because you've had sort of trickle up from college to and trickle down from the NFL, guys going back and forth. So it's becoming more similar, but it's not the same. I mean, that starts with the hash marks, which make a much bigger difference than I think most people realize. But the recruiting piece and all the other stuff, it is a very different thing. But the fact that he and Bill Belichick spent last year really looking at the college game, that's interesting to me. And that was something that had been out. That's not new information today, but that was interesting to me when I first heard that. And it feels like this is maybe a little bit more intentional of a move than people might have thought. Two longtime NFL guys to spend a year really looking at college, and then both to end up in college. There's a little bit more of a plan here. It wasn't just that the phone rang and Ryan Day was like, well, I grew up rooting for the Patriots, and this guy used to be on the Patriots, so let me give him a call. I think there was a little more thought to it on Day's end, a little more thought to it on Patricia's end. But to spend a year looking at it, we have seen the Nick Saban School for Wayward Boys kind of approach before to coach hiring, and that has generally worked out really well, where you go and your last head coaching job didn't end well, and so then you go and you spend some time working under Nick Saban, and you sort of rehab your image and rehab your reputation a little bit. And Nick Saban is not walking through that door. So now you have there are only three active college coaches with a national championship to their name, and it's Dabo Swinney, Kirby Smart, and Ryan Day. So this is an opportunity for Ryan Day to maybe follow that Nick Saban pathway. And Day talked about the fact that he had looked at that Nick Saban model before he made the Patricia hire.
Yeah, just as an aside, when Urban Meyer got here, the target was Nick Saban and Alabama. And now
there are two banners up there. Yeah. There will probably, I'm guessing, be some new banners up there shortly, but there are two banners up there on the wall. One of them is the Sugar Bowl win over Alabama. One of them is the Sugar Bowl win over Clemson. Because at the time those went up in 2021, those were the two big bullies that Ohio State was going up against in the recruiting realm. So those were the games you wanted the recruits to come in here and look at and see.
So Ryan Day did say he was very thorough in the search, as you guys may have seen. Tom, I guess what you're saying is what didn't happen is, like, Ryan Day, if he knows where Matt Patricia, what city is, like, dials the operator. It's like, Patricia, Matt, can I get a number for that?
411. Still probably a thing? I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And then 1-800-COLLECT, I believe, is also.
Collect. Hey, it's Ryan Day, call me back. Yes.
Come pick me up. I'm at the skating rink.
These kids will remember.
Yeah, then you start talking about the personnel with Matt Patricia, and it's still early, but he did say, like, it doesn't take you long to get here to seek out Caleb Downs, you know. And then it doesn't take long before you see Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, or as James Laurinaitis calls him, Velli.
Belly, all right.
I don't know that we're allowed to do that.
Well, these are great because you pick up nicknames. Because Brian Hartline called Brandon as Bi. I'm like, all right, let's add that one to the river.
So, but like for a guy like Matt Patricia, who we've talked about this before, where the New England thing is you find what can guys do, and then put them in those positions. Because he said the reason that all evolved was because at New England, they had a system, they had a scheme, they had 3-4. But when you keep drafting at the bottom of the draft, they started drafting the best available players, and then find out what they, give them what they drafted them to do. You have them do. So it becomes more like compartmentalized, but also more versatile. Like you do this thing, and that's what your plan is. And like their linebackers would change every couple of years, and they'd change what they did with those linebackers. But when you look at Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, are two big, long guys. There's a lot that you can do. And as we already said like 5 minutes ago, the CJ Hicks thing, there's a lot you can do there. So you can just tell, like, this is, you said like the brain starts going once you start seeing these guys, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you got to remember, they haven't seen them on the field in any kind of meaningful way yet. So, spring ball, when spring ball starts, that is on March 17th, a couple Mondays from now, that's when that process will really start. But obviously I'm going to guess they have watched, Matt Patricia in particular has watched a ton of film to sort of get up to speed with some of these guys. And, these are, there are only a handful of guys on that defense who have played any kind of meaningful snaps, like started role kind of snaps. So these are, there's a lot of new and exciting to this for these guys.
So who did you talk to off camera or off live stream?
Off live stream, I talked to Carlos Locklyn quite a bit. Let me circle back to Tim Walton real quick.
Okay.
So we stay on defense. Tim Walton, he was on, I think, the live stream for some of it, but I got a chance to talk to. It was Matt Patricia and it was Tyler Bowen, the two new guys, and then it was Tim Walton. So I had Tim Walton all to myself for 5 minutes or so. Got a chance to ask him about some of the younger guys, Bryce West, Aaron Scott, those guys. I mean, he talked about the fact there's a real opportunity for those guys out there this spring, especially because Davis Igbinosun is not going to be practicing a whole heck of a lot this spring, especially early. Like there could be a ton of reps for those younger guys out there, and that's a real opportunity for those young guys because we just did a show about this just a few days ago. Those guys are people who you saw enough from in their freshman year that it was kind of like, okay, well, you're sort of on track for something bigger. And this is the spring where you really have an opportunity to capitalize on that and make the most of those reps. He talked about Patricia and the fact that, I asked him about, Patricia being a front end guy and Walton sort of being a back end guy in terms of defense and how they work together. Because that's sort of the plan is you have Walton sort of focusing on the back end of the defense and Patricia sort of on the front end of the defense because that's sort of where their expertise is. And Walton said, listen, we've both also coordinated full defenses before, so it's not this is not just it's not just I only know this thing and he only knows this thing, but putting those two pieces together. If you have a guy who's 80% secondary and back end, and you've got a guy who's 80% sort of front end, you can sort of
that's 160%.
That is 160% of a defense. So yeah, that's
pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty mathematically impossible, but also pretty good. Walton seems like legitimately excited to just in his new role and having worked with Patricia before. He said he knew when he heard that when that name sort of came up, it was kind of like it was not like who's this? It's like you know who that is. He's worked with him before.
Let me Google this guy.
Yeah, sounded very excited to talk to him. Now on to Carlos Locklyn.
Well, let's stay with the defense. Because I talked to James Laurinaitis, and he again, as I said, very excited about the hire. But he was talking about Arvell Reese and what the next step is for him, and basically it's just preparation, habits, and leadership. With all of these things that he's showing, and the consistency of being the middle linebacker for the team. And I asked, with Sonny not needing as many reps this spring, he's like, well, don't tell Sonny that. Don't let Sonny know. But this is going to be a huge opportunity for all of these young guys to get more reps and to create to make it known that they want to play. He also talked about how he wants something that Malcolm Jenkins told the team last year, like everybody in here should want to be the leader of their class. So that's what he's telling his linebackers as well. Like for Garrett Stover and Peyton Pierce, be the leader of the second-year guys. For Arvell Reese, be the leader of the juniors. Certainly Sonny, be the leader of the seniors. So, he's hoping that this is also just a fresh start for CJ Hicks, which I think clearly it will be. And now it's just up to him to do something with it.
Yeah, and he has felt a little bit miscast for a couple of years now, and that's something we've talked about a bunch, that it's like, well, maybe he fits there, but maybe he fits close to the line of scrimmage. I know that's what Mark Gibler's been talking about since basically day one that he stepped on campus. And same thing with Sonny Styles.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of opportunity has not necessarily presented itself yet, and now it's here, and now you have a real opportunity, because it's a fresh start, not just because you've got all these available snaps and all these available reps, but also because you got a new defensive coordinator who specializes in the front end. And so this is, he doesn't have any kind of preconceived notions. It's like, let's see what it looks like on the field. And it sounds like they're going to be trying a bunch of different stuff this spring. They're going to be, Ryan Day talked about the fact that the biggest piece of spring ball is individual improvement, getting individual guys better. But they're also, they got to figure out what they've got. And there's a lot of new faces in terms of starters. There's, a new defensive coordinator who's going to, sort of form his own impressions of these guys. And that's a real opportunity for guys to go ahead. You have someone who's looking to form a first impression of you. This is a real opportunity for you to make that a positive one.
And then also, it's, as Laurinaitis said, this is where the lab work. Like the coaches can get in the lab and start messing around, and what can they do with the different players. Tom, do you want to talk anything about the offense?
Well, did you talk to Matt Guerreri at all?
I did not.
Okay. So then let's move on to the offense. I'll start with Carlos Locklyn, just because we've said his name 1,000 times already. He said he was asked, do you consider yourself an elite recruiter? He said he's not an elite recruiter. He's an elite relationship builder. He said this is not. You're not selling cars here. You're not trying to just like trick someone into coming. You're trying to,
pull the string off the stick.
First, we got to talk about NIL. Then we got to talk about the undercoding. No, it is a relationship building thing. And he talked about the fact that multiple guys, Turbo Rogers, he had a relationship since 7th grade with Turbo Rogers. Like he had started talking to him then. James Peoples, I think James Peoples was he talked to him since 10th grade. These are not like new. When Carlos Locklyn was new to Ohio State, Carlos Locklyn was not new to James Peoples or Turbo Rogers or some of these other guys, because that's what he has made a really big point of emphasis about.
He wasn't even new to C.J. Donaldson.
No. Sam Williams-Dixon, he did the Bryson Rogers leaving the portal, come back in the portal thing, and Carlos Locklyn said when he talked to Sam Williams-Dixon and his parents, he talked to him about. Not about football at all. It was about you're from here. Mm-hmm. The value of an Ohio State degree if you are from here and you're long-term. And, the football piece of it, I'm sure, like there's an opportunity there. He talked about needing to, wanting to find a pair and a spare. He called it a Jim Tressellism. I think that would predate Jim Tressel. That would have been a Woody thing. But, finding your pair and a spare there, finding your guys there. He is very high on James Peoples. Talked about the fact that James Peoples is leading that room already, being that second-year guy leading the room. There you go, James Peoples doing that.
What's frustrating, Tom, is like I've already just recently written about CJ Hicks. There's a story there. I've already just recently written like a couple times about James Peoples, and there's more to write because there's more to tell.
Well, I can tell you, Tony, that there are still 176 days until the Texas game, so there will be plenty of time to do that. That's not this show's problem. That's a different show. Sam Williams, he talked about James Peoples, said it's a microwave society, and everything is immediate gratification. And, guys come in and they're like, well, my recruiting ranking says I'm really good, so I should play in my first year and be off to the NFL after 3 years. He goes, that's not how it works in my room. So, he said, you got to appreciate the climb. And, James Peoples leading that room now. I think James Peoples is probably going to lead that room in carries this year as well. Just, and he also talked about the fact, he said James Peoples thinks he's 6 foot tall, and he said more like 5'10". Said running backs play on special teams. Like that is a non-negotiable. Running backs play on special teams, and that does not mean like, oh, you're out there. But he said the expectation is you are 1 or 2 on the depth chart. If you are a running back, you are going to play special teams. And I go back to like the video of Ezekiel Elliott blowing up the Purdue guy on kick return. Like, I can't imagine that's a very difficult sell at Ohio State, where it's like that's sort of been the culture.
And they show
going
that
way back. Yeah, that's something that you hear about them showing periodically.
Terry McLaurin too.
Yep. And Bo Jackson talked about Bo Jackson. Just he talks about Bo Jackson like he's excited. He talked about Isaiah West in a very positive way. Talked about Turbo Rogers, who's not here yet, but just sort of that background with him. Bo Jackson. I don't want to read too much into it, but he talked about, just gifts from God that Bo Jackson has. And, you can tell he is very excited about Bo Jackson. So, I don't want to put together a, ranking of which true freshman is going to be where. But, boy, the tone in his voice when he talked about Bo Jackson was real excitement.
We should do a show next week would be like post interviews hype train rankings. I think we did something similar last year where it's like these are the freshman rankings right now based on
Jeremiah Smith 1.
Yes.
Jeremiah Smith 2. 3. Jeremiah Smith
4. Also JJ Smith.
Yes. Other than that, that was kind of the big stuff from Carlos Locklyn. Tony, we love a good roommate story on
yes,
this,
of course,
on
absolutely.
This show. Historically, I go back to the Dwayne Haskins, Austin Mack roommate story. Obviously, it goes further back than that. People have had college roommates for a long time, decades, in fact.
Can confirm.
Two of the coaches on this year's staff were roommates during COVID. Would you like to guess who they were?
They were I can give you two that were. Then Billy Fessler and Keenan Bailey were.
They were, yes. Okay, so yes, I got that from Keenan Bailey.
Yeah, we were. I think we were over there maybe at the same time.
Well,
go ahead because it's an interesting. It's a good story.
No, you've ruined it. No,
basically.
No, Keenan Bailey said, COVID starts, the world shuts down, football shuts down. Keenan Bailey sent his wife back to Cleveland to just sort of like, well, I'm going to be around people. You should be somewhere else. And he said all day, every day, it was the two of them just doing basically football clinics to each other, like in the you're just watching film, talking about football, watching football, thinking about football. He said he learned a lot more from Billy Fessler than he probably gave Billy Fessler. But he talked about Billy Fessler just in terms of just what an incredible football mind, and it didn't. Ryan Day talking about Billy Fessler, it didn't sound like that was much of a we're going to have to conduct a national search. It was like, we've got our guy. He's fantastic. He was probably, way, had way outstripped his position and job title and salary last year in terms of what he was contributing to the program. So that sounds like that was a very easy move.
Well, and I asked Billy Fessler, so when Chip Kelly leaves, are you expecting the job? And he's like, you can't expect it. Then I was like, well, when it was offered, how long did it take you? 0 seconds. It took me 0 seconds to accept the job. And you think of this guy. So he was a graduate assistant at Ohio State 2020 and 2021. Before that, spent time with Joe Moorhead. So this guy's career, Joe Moorhead, Ryan Day, Chip Kelly. It does not get any better than that in terms of college offensive upbringing for a quarterbacks coach, because all three of those guys are fantastic college offensive minds.
Now, when was he at Penn State? He played at Penn State.
He played at Penn State in maybe a decade ago or so as a walk-on.
Oh, yes, but I was wondering if we were going to get to lump Jay Paterno in with that.
No, I don't believe so.
For more than one reason?
No, because that would have had to have been 2010, 2011.
Yeah,
so he's a pretty young guy.
Okay,
as is everybody. As you look at their Wikipedia page, and you're like, is Tyler Bowen 35? Putting your glasses down.
Okay, everyone brace yourself. Ready? Tyler Bowen, Ohio State's new offensive line coach, was born in 1989. A lot of these guys, like Keenan Bailey, was in college in 2015. A lot of these guys, you kind of know, these guys are young. Tyler Bowen, that was one where I was like, I need, had my hands on my knees, I need a minute. 1989, Tony. We may, in fact, be getting old.
So, and then got to talk to Billy Fessler for quite a while. And clearly, one of the things that we had talked about is Ryan Day. He knows how Ryan Day wants his quarterbacks to be coached, and he's done that. And boy, he's really, really excited to be here. As who wouldn't be as a quarterbacks coach? He's like, there are a handful of elite level premier jobs. Quarterbacks coach at Ohio State is one of them. Kind of like Brian Hartline's where else on the ladder is there to go? I coach wide receivers at Ohio State. Like, it's harder to get better than that. And that's the way Billy Fessler feels about quarterbacks and the ability in recruiting to relate to these guys. They always talk about that. So that's my thought. I did not get to talk to Tyler Bowen at all.
Neither did I.
But when Ryan Day talks about how much like he is going to help the recruiting, like there's no doubt. I think really, really good or something to that effect is what Ryan Day said. So that's fascinating to me. I do want to. I know we're jumping around, but the last guy that I don't think was streamed. Did you stream Keenan Bailey at the end?
I streamed like the last half of Keenan Bailey.
Okay,
so people got a little bit of him. The Max Clare thing.
Yes, right.
Go ahead and
because one of the things is you're bringing in before you bring in somebody like Max Clare, you check with your room, and he has Bennett Christian and Will Kazmarek, and he's like, what do you think? Because if you don't want this, I won't do it. And if he's not a fit, I'm not going to do it. In terms of bringing in Max Clare, and even to visit, that sort of thing. And so, no, they're all good with it. If it makes the room better, fantastic. And so, they brought him in, everything worked out. And, then I asked him, is the reason you didn't lose anybody? Because they all played last year. It's like, that's a big factor, but also they're all just very, very close. And he talked about how Jelani Thurman has blossomed over the offseason as well, because that's a guy that his playing time diminished as the season went on. So you could see, like, there have been players who, when playing time diminishes, they diminish in terms of their presence and their desire to do anything. That's not been the experience there. So again, they're loaded at tight end this year.
They're loaded at tight end, and Keenan Bailey talked about the fact that the expectation is this is Ohio State. This should not just be wide receiver U. This should be tight end U. This should be the best unit in the country in terms of tight ends. That's the expectation. The guys know that. Having really talented players in that room, and a lot of really talented players in that room, coupled with they're using 13 personnel, they're using 14 personnel, they're playing 4 tight ends in the college football playoffs. They're playing 4 tight ends in the national championship.
And real tight ends, not offensive linemen or defensive linemen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've got 6 guys in the depth chart, but 4 of them are playing in the national championship game. That tells you if you live up to your piece of the piece of the equation, if you are meeting the expectation, and the expectation's high, but you're recruiting talented players. Max Clare is the number 1 tight end in the portal, like with a bullet this year, not even a question. You're bringing back Will Kazmarek, who was a really, really good, really big contributor who, when he was missing last year, you noticed it. Jelani Thurman is an athletic freak and has not been, a 50-snap-a-game guy yet. And this is his 3rd year. Bennett Christian in his 4th year. These are all guys who are good enough to play in a national championship game. So the opportunity's there, and that seems like that sort of sets you up for, man, you're really going to get pushed every day, but there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah, and also for Max Clare to come here knowing Keenan Bailey telling him, like, nobody's leaving. Everybody's coming back, and they're all playing. So just know that, and Max Clare's like, yeah, whatever, that's fine.
Do you think Max Clare coming to Ohio State from a 1-11 Purdue team that only beat, I think, Indiana State last year? Do you think that's like the opposite of the Matt Patricia speech to the Detroit Lions? Like, have to explain the culture a little slowly?
Yeah. Plus, I think Max Clare also knows that 2025, Tom, it's the year of the tight end.
I have heard that. That is a thing. We should talk a little bit about spring ball and what the expectation is for spring ball. Ryan Day talked about the spring showcase. He said spring game, and then he's like, showcase.
Spring game, okay.
Yes, and he said they're going to do fewer padded practices this spring, treat more days as helmeted practices, like almost like an OTA style approach, which like an NFL kind of approach, which Day has coached in the NFL. Brian Hartline obviously played for a long time in the NFL. Tim Walton, Matt Patricia. Like, these are guys who sort of know what that model looks like. And with the schedule being what it is, and with as long as the season now stretches, you're now playing an NFL length season if you get far enough in the college football playoff. So you're sort of adjusting to that a little bit. But the spring game, it sounds like it will be some kind of a spring game. There's going to be a scrimmage element to that because they know what is on deck. They know who after that spring game, spring showcase, they know the next time they're going to be playing football in front of fans inside Ohio Stadium, the Texas Longhorns are going to be on the other sideline. So you don't have an Akron this year to sort of ramp yourself up or sort of get started slowly. you're getting thrown into the deep end of the pool right away. And Ryan Day said, the veteran guys the veteran guys are fine. Like Caleb Downs knows what it's like to play against Texas, and you're not worried about that and playing in front of this full stadium and all that kind of stuff. The younger guys, this is a big spring for the younger guys. They're going to let, it sounds like the older, more experienced guys, returning starter kind of types, Davis Igbenos and Caleb Downs, those kinds of guys are not necessarily going to get nearly as many reps as they would in a typical spring, but they're cognizant of the fact that you got to get these guys ready. You got to, but I think it sounds like it's going to be a lot of young guys, especially at the start of the spring.
Well, I think Ryan Day also realizes that you better have spring game mentioned, or else all of the people that you want there to give the young players the experience of playing in Ohio Stadium in front of a crowd. Like if you just say spring showcase, what is it? I don't know. Yeah. Ticket sales start to, I don't know if $20 and a service fee for what is a showcase? Yeah. So there will be some scrimmaging there. And again, you've got quarterbacks that need work. You've got receivers that need work. And I don't know how much longer we're going to go, but I do want to talk about the quarterbacks.
We need to talk about the quarterbacks. Yeah.
Because I did ask Ryan Day, what do what's the repetitions like? Is it going to be 40, 40, 40, 40, 20, which is what I said. He's like, no, we're just going to roll them. So it's going to be 33, Tom, and then
33.
That's right.
Well, 33 and a third.
So who's going to get that third? That's who the starter is.
33 and a third for each.
Okay.
And it's a 3 repeating. So, I mean, it's
the walk-on gets the 3 repeating.
Maybe. We'll see.
Every 100th snap.
Every 100th snap, yeah. He did talk about, I think it was Day, he talked about Tavian St. Clair and how, maybe it was Brian Hartline, how Tavian St. Clair had been
I think it was Billy Fessler.
A lot of people talk today, Tony. My brain is swimming with the amount of football stuff we just got fire hosed. Tony, it was like drinking through a fire hose.
It was.
First time anyone said that phrase in this room. Tavian St. Clair was in meetings like all last spring. Like, I don't think he missed a meeting, I think they said. Tavian St. Clair was in the college football playoff. Like, he was as part of that team in terms of preparing for the college football playoff. That sounds like that was an enormous head start for him. And this is one of these things we've talked about on one of the shows at some point in the last month or two. Being a local guy, being able to come to Ohio State virtually every week during the season for games, but also being able to come down for practices, being able to be in meetings, all that kind of stuff. That is an enormous head start because there's so much of being a quarterback. Like Tavian St. Clair, he's a big dude. He's got a strong arm. Like, the arm talent's there. You don't worry about that. There's a lot of, how often do we hear guys talk about the first year, everything was just kind of a blur, and the second year, once you actually understand the offense, things slow down. It feels like Tavian St. Clair has already been through one of the springs. He's been through, this is really kind of not his first spring as an Ohio State quarterback, which is an enormous head start over what you would typically think.
He's a true freshman, but he's more than a true freshman. He's not quite a redshirt freshman. It's like his red shirt was thrown in the wash with his white shirts. He's come out as like a pink shirt, maybe pink shirt freshman. We'll workshop that.
Well, and we're talking about Tavian St. Clair because that's where my brain went. But we need to talk about Julian Sayin, and we need to talk about Lincoln Keenholz, because those are the guys who, my expectation would certainly be that those are the two guys who are really fighting for the quarterback job, and Tavian St. Clair is probably ahead of where a true freshman is, but think about where true freshman quarterbacks have been in the past for Ohio State, and it's like you're probably not ready to win 11 games as a true freshman starting quarterback, and that's okay. That shouldn't be the expectation. Julian Sayin, it sounds like he is sort of trying to embrace that role. They talked about the fact that it's leadership and something else in terms of what they're looking for out of quarterback. Leadership and toughness in terms of what they're looking for out of quarterbacks. And he said they're starting to work with guys like Julian Sayin and Lincoln Keenholz in terms of like building those reps as a leader and getting up and talking in front of the crowd and in front of the team. And he said, like, sometimes it's going to be a little clunky at first. Like, that's a muscle you have to build, just like you have to spend time in the weight room and you have to build those practice reps. You need reps in terms of leadership as well, and that's something that they're starting to build with him right now, and with Lincoln Keenholz as well. But those are that this is all they like. Everyone wants to hear about, like, oh well, who's completing, who's thrown the most touchdown passes to Jeremiah Smith in workouts. Like, that's not what they're talking about. That's not what they're thinking about right now. This is like all the big picture stuff. It's all the crap that Will Howard did last year that no one really talked about. But it's like now Will Howard's gone, and now James Peoples is the old head in the running backs room, and Julian Sayin and Lincoln Keenholz are the veterans in the quarterback room.
Yeah, I mean, Bennett Christian is the leader of the tight ends, and he's played for 1 year. This is his 4th year, but he's really only played for 1 year. But and James Laurinaitis talked about the leadership. Like he's over the years, you've seen fake rah-rah, and you can't have that at middle linebacker. You can't have that at quarterback. And talking to Billy Fessler about that, he's like, well, the thing you need to understand about Julian Sayin is he was a freshman last year who knew his place. Mm-hmm. You can't walk in as a freshman and start being like, boom, 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 like, hey, Simon, I need you over here. Hey, Fryer, what do you, that was terrible. Like, you call that a pass set?
Sayin doesn't say. Simon says.
There you go. Boom. And so now you're seeing more of that because it's required. It's not required. They are leaders now because they are the quarterbacks. And this is not the first year these guys have been quarterbacks. So most college quarterbacks have been quarterbacks since they're about 6 years old because that's what their dad wanted them to be, but they've been leading a team. So eventually when I am vying for this role, I'm going to be leading the team because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. And it comes out naturally.
Yeah. Yeah. And, these are guys who have generally led big programs. Lincoln Keenholz wasn't leading a big program by South Dakota standards. Julian Sayin was leading a big program by California standards. I mean, these are guys who, playing in front of 5,000 people is not going to freak anyone out. These are guys who've had to do it on a big stage. The stage is getting bigger now, obviously, but these are guys who have done it before.
Should we answer questions? Do we have
really one of the biggest questions we had is the battery's at 24%.
Nobody cares.
Terry asking, what are y'all's first impressions of the new coaches?
First impressions. Well, here's the problem with that. As Tom said at the outset, they put Matt Patricia at one table and then Tyler Bowen at the other table. So I didn't get any impression of Tyler Bowen because I was with Matt Patricia. I wanted to talk to both of them, but I had to stay with Patricia just because it's defensive coordinator.
I had a one-on-one with Tim Walton basically for 5 minutes because I was over there.
But the thing is, like, everybody raves about Tyler Bowen as a recruiter. So I assure you, he can schmooze the media.
Yeah, and for people who want to see these, obviously we sort of bounced around to give you a little bit of a taste of as many guys as we could during those interviews. We're going to have all of those interviews in their entirety up on the YouTube channel this afternoon. So you'll be able to get your own impressions of those guys.
But in terms of Matt Patricia, it's like, this was not Detroit Lions. Matt Patricia, like, he was cordial, friendly, getting names. There's no way he's going to remember everybody's name.
Yeah.
But, he was into it.
I think back to a year ago what did you hear about Chip Kelly at UCLA?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Chip Kelly was a curmudgeon. Chip Kelly didn't have time for anyone's crap. Chip Kelly was grump. Chip Kelly was sick of your crap. And then Chip Kelly came in and Chip Kelly was perfectly happy here. Like, I think when Chip Kelly probably last year would have loved to have been an NFL offensive coordinator. Because if being Ohio State's offensive coordinator was really, truly his first choice, Bill O'Brien would not have stepped foot in this building. So I think Chip Kelly was probably hoping to be an NFL offensive coordinator last year. But when he came to, when that didn't work out and he came to Ohio State, well, he was pretty excited to be here. I think he looked around and went like, I can work with it. We're not in UCLA. We're not in Westwood anymore. You have Jeremiah Smith does not play for UCLA. Like, and I think Matt Patricia has to be walking in here and kind of having that same, he wanted to be in college very clearly. I mean, would he prefer to be in the NFL? I don't know, maybe. But based on what he did last year, very clearly college was part of his plan. Now he's here. And you have to be kind of excited to look around the room and go like, all right, this is not the NFL where all the teams are like this far apart. Mm-hmm. The number of teams that have a Sonny Styles or a Caleb Downs or, whatever, Kenyatta Jackson or Arvell Reese or whatever, whichever guy you want to kind of pick, that is a vanishingly small percentage of the 134 FBS teams.
Yeah, Matt Patricia looks at this room. He says, like, I've got Caleb Downs for 2 more years.
Well, let's sit down. We're going to talk about the hash marks and we're going to talk about the eligibility rules.
Oh, darn it. Kevin.
Robert Howard agrees. Chip was great and very engaging with the media.
Yeah, you're right though, Tom. It was like Chip Kelly when he got here. You're expecting like him to. This is going to be his own personal Festivus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear about it.
Perhaps you remember my time at Oregon.
Although I will blow the wind out of your sails here, Tom. Some members of the Ohio State beat did run into Chip Kelly at the combine, and I don't know that he recognized any of them.
Oh, well.
So
Well, I wasn't there, so.
Chip. But again, you say he didn't want to be here at Ohio State. He gets here, and it turns into a $6 million a year contract. So
I don't. It's not
right. I know what you're saying.
Precise with our language. It wasn't that he didn't want to be here. This was not Plan A last year. And I think if we want to have a real honest moment, I think we've had this conversation before. If we want to have a real honest moment, this was not Plan A last year.
Worked out.
It worked out just fine. It would be hard. You'd be hard pressed to come up with a way that last year would have worked out better.
That's really just a great metaphor for life. It's never going to work out, but sometimes it does if you're lucky and your first choice is like doesn't work out, and it's like, well, I'll fall back on this, and boom, $6 million.
It helps if you're from New Hampshire, but that doesn't work for everyone. Kevin.
Yeah, I lived in New Hampshire for 2 years. Where's my $6 million deal?
That's the joke.
We got any questions? Okay. All right. We should probably cut it. I've got to go work. There's a lot of football stuff that it's all downloading. Got to like upload it and spit it out. But I do want to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate it. Spring is 10 days away. Spring football starting 10 days away. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like for us, but we'll be here. So go ahead and hit the bell to be notified because we're going to be going live. We're going to be dropping videos, as you guys know. And, of course, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com where we're talking about all of this, everything we're hearing behind the scenes and things like that. You can find at the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you later.